Welcome to the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report. I'm your host, Tom Clark, along with co-hosts Corey Carroll and Colton Jacobs, here to bring you weekly insight on all things NASCAR, with a review of past week's races and a preview of upcoming events on the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series schedule. Remember, you can always follow us on Twitter at TCW Speed Report. Email us your questions to tcwspeedreport@gmail.com. Check out the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report Facebook page. And I would like to welcome my one and only co-host for this evening, Mr. Colton Jacobs.
Yeah, we're just one alone here on the co-host side,
and that's perfectly fine. We can trudge through it.
Yeah, Mr. Carroll had some personal things to take care of. So
I feel that he's here though. I keep wanting to look over and see that he's
I do too. But
he's sitting there.
It's kind of sad, lonely.
We'll maybe get a blow-up doll. I mean, yeah, or a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, cardboard cutout.
Cardboard cutout. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report. A quick shout out to our official partners, Rowe Brothers Painting in Hickory, North Carolina. That's ROWE Brothers Painting in Hickory, North Carolina. Check them out on Facebook for contact information. There are free estimates and more than happy to do your spring and summer projects. And speaking of projects, also a new official partner of the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report, the City Farm Project, also located in North Carolina. Check them out at the City Farm Project. It's on Facebook. Be sure to like them and follow them on Facebook. They educate people living in urban settings on how to farm and how to build a sustainable lifestyle and all natural food. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check that out.
I think it's important for people to learn how to sustain themselves.
It's very important. I mean, I'm an advocate for it.
Absolutely.
With me and my chickens, so
yeah, I need to get back to gardening. My dad was a big gardener, and man, I love fresh garden vegetables. You can't beat them.
Can't beat them, man. You can't beat them. So we are reviewing the FedEx 400 at Dover. I kind of thought last week, as I listened to last week's podcast, that it was the FedEx 400 presented by Autism Speaks 400. I said it twice.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I heard that. Yeah.
So, but almost very rare on the NASCAR schedule. We had a triple header weekend with the Camping World Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. Colton, kind of give us a rundown on what those two races, the highlights on some of those two events.
Well, both races were the same length. Truck race was your normal beating banging. It was kind of a wreck fest there for a while. You had Jennifer Jo Cobb, and this is something we'll talk about later. Also, Trevor Baynes, she got wrecked. She was very unhappy. Came up, walked up into the track while the trucks were still running. NASCAR said that's a no. She got called to the hauler. That was a big thing. But the Roush trucks and the BK trucks were really strong. Tyler Reddick, he continues to show his talent in Brad Keselowski's trucks. And he went on and won that race pretty handily. And he's going to be an up-and-comer. Watch for him.
Oh, yeah.
Watch for him. But and then, we go on to the Xfinity race, and it was strung out for a little while, but it got heated towards the end. When we had a few cautions there at the end that brought them. We had teammates tangle, the Roush cars and Bubba Wallace and Chris Buescher going for the lead with also, I believe it was Regan Smith in 7. But Chris Buescher went on and got his third win of the season. He was the points leader going into the day. Continues to maintain the points lead. And
Chris Buescher drives for Roush. Am I correct?
In the 60.
So far from what I can tell, Roush is kind of always been good in the lower series. Maybe I kind of feel like maybe this is like a restructuring in a sense. Making sure they have a good talented driver pool with Bubba Wallace and Chris
Bubba
Buescher.
Wallace and Chris Buescher are going to be good. And that it's kind of like Roush is going from the ground up to kind of rebuild because their program's so down, but. They really put a whipping on Kyle Busch's cars, Joe Gibbs' cars, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s cars, and Chris Buescher's having a really good season. 3 wins already. He only had 1 last year. He's the points leader. He's really, he's outlasting Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott and those guys, Regan Smith, that are usually up there in the points. So he's having a great season.
That 60 car is really almost is a very famous number in that series. Remember when Mark Martin used to drive the number 60 Thunderbird, sponsored by Winn-Dixie, and I remember going to the grocery store and his face to be plastered everywhere because before Kyle Busch, he was he had the most wins in that series with 47. I think it ended up being 48. But so that's good to see that Roush is kind of.
And I think after Mark Martin, I think Biffle drove it up until
Biffle, even Edwards. Edwards,
yeah, Edwards drove it some.
So a lot of good names have come out from that car. So that'll be good to follow Chris Buescher on up into the Cup Series. Our review of the FedEx 400, presented by Autism Speaks at Dover, started the day. Denny Hamlin won the pole.
He pretty much won everything all weekend. He was the fastest in all, but I think one practice got the pole, so he was the favorite going in.
It was almost. We were talking about it last week about how the floodgates were opening for Joe Gibbs Racing, and it started out pretty good with Denny Hamlin winning the pole and led a good chunk of the first half of the race. I mean, led 118 of I guess you could say, the first 200 laps.
Pretty much.
And now, admittedly, I didn't get to see a whole lot of it because of work.
Yeah,
yes, we work, people. We work. So, Colton, kind of give me a rundown of the first half of the race and let the fans know.
Well, the first 200 miles, 200 laps, it was pretty much the Denny Martin Truex battle. Denny had the strong car at the beginning of runs. He was fast. He would jump way out, but Martin Truex had that long run speed, and he reeled him in every time. And Denny, you were about on point. Denny had led about 118 of that first 200, but the rest of that 200 was Martin Truex coming in, and Truex really had the car to beat again. And, I mean, this is the third out of 4 weeks that he has had the car. I think he led the most laps at Kansas and Charlotte.
And Charlotte, yeah.
And now he was your lap leader with 131 this week. So, and there wasn't Kyle Busch. He was having a good run. He was up there. You had your usual suspects, Harvick and Johnson up there. Dale Jr. had to start at the rear. Greg Ives said he saw something weird with the rear end gear, so he started from the back, went a lap down early. But really, Denny and Truex, those two guys really had a stranglehold those first 200 laps.
We've seen that a lot with Junior here this year, where during practice or qualifying, he's due to a change, he's had to go to the rear. He is proving that not only is he much more mature driver than he was in the past, but Greg Ives is as good of a crew chief, maybe even better than Steve Letarte, because they've been flying up through the field from the back, and it's always these little things like him speeding on pit road or loose wheels or and I think what Junior would tell you first and foremost, they got to qualify better. They consistently qualify in that 14 to 20 range, but Dale Jr. He battled. There weren't many cautions. It seemed like the first race this year there wasn't a competition caution. And he went a lap down early, but he battled back, got in the top 5 towards the middle point of the race around lap 250, and then on green flag pit stops sped coming onto pit road entering. He was just a couple hundred RPM over, but they got him. He came back in, went 3 laps down, and that was pretty much the end of his day. Yeah, I think towards the proof was in the pudding. I think only like 11 cars finished on the lead lap.
It was
yesterday.
It was something. I mean, I remember seeing Dale Jr. and I don't know here. Let's take a look at the rundown because let's see. 12th, Brad Keselowski 1 lap down in 12th. Joey Logano was the last car on the lead lap in 11th. And Brad's one of those. I really thought Brad was going to be a lot stronger, finishing 12th. Joey finishing 11th. The Penske cars, but Brad was not a factor. He complained to Paul Wolfe all day that he had no balance in the car at all. Well,
maybe it's because of lack of sleep due to his new baby. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
We've the Penske cars have been kind of running mid-pack mediocre here lately. So we saw. So like you said, some of the usual suspects up at the front. I will say that Tony Stewart finishing 16th. Based on how his season has gone so far, that was a good run for him.
Yeah, I think that is good for Tony. He was up 11th or 12th at the time, but but you do see he finished 2 laps down. So
yeah,
he continues. I don't remember the last time Tony finished on the lead lap in a race.
It's been a while.
I mean, we may have to get our Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report researchers on that.
Absolutely, they're busy downstairs looking up these stats for us.
Yeah.
So we saw throughout the rest of the race, Martin Truex Jr. took the lead, and it was, like you said, pretty much the car to beat. But we saw little spurts of what I was able to catch, little spurts of the Joe Gibbs cars all having a shot at being the upset. Kyle Busch, just back from a broken leg, had led in I think he got into.
He was up to third at one point, and Kenseth ran in the top 5 all day. Hamlin was fast all day, but Kenseth had pit road issues. Denny's car just went away on him. I don't think him and Darian were able to keep up with the track. And then Kyle got in that wreck with Brett Moffitt.
Yes, that's who.
And he was not happy about it.
But he was not. But it was cool to see Kyle back. I love that paint scheme, that Skittles paint scheme.
Oh, I was watching with my brother, and I was telling him, I said, I'm not a Kyle Busch fan, but God, I love that Skittles, and it makes me want Skittles.
Oh yeah,
I want to go out and buy the biggest damn bag of Skittles I can find.
I thought it looked pretty retro because the Skittles logo hasn't changed in a long time.
No, it's just red with the rainbow and Skittles.
Oh man, it just looks awesome out there.
Maybe that's the new rainbow car.
Possibly. So yeah, Kyle. It was good to see Kyle Busch back in a form where we're used to seeing, being exciting. Making moves that we usually don't see on the track. But there towards the end, we saw a little bit of different strategies play a hand in who the winner would eventually be.
Yeah, they went in for the final couple of pit stops, but there were a couple of cautions just grouped really tightly together, and Jimmie and Kevin both elected to stay out, and Rodney Childers and Chad Knaus both said over the radio, track position, and it's the same story, same old song and dance as it's been all year, track position. Truex, Kane, and I believe Larson took 2, and the rest of the guys on the lead lap took 4, but it just proved that track position's the Mac Daddy right now, because Jimmie and Kevin were both on tires that were 55 plus laps old, and Larson and Almirola and McMurray and them were all on fresh tires, 4, and then Truex and Kane were on 2, and they couldn't get past them.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, Jimmie Johnson has had this much success so far this season. Just, we're not even halfway yet, and they're never the ones being talked about throughout the entire race.
Yeah,
this year at least, they're always sneaking up from behind and getting them.
And it's really seemed like the last 4 to 5 weeks, Jimmie and Kevin continued to get their top 3 finishes, top 4 finishes, but they're not leading all the laps like they usually. Usually Jimmie leads 300 laps or something at Dover and just spanks everybody. And this time, you see he's the winner. He led the last 23 laps.
23 laps, yeah.
So he didn't really come on till late.
For his 10th win at Dover, that was pretty impressive. That puts him into some great company about having, double-digit wins at tracks, and Darrell Waltrip winning 12 at Bristol, and Dale Sr. winning 10 at Talladega, and
this is definitely a huge milestone for him. I didn't think he was going to get it today, but it is something we're going to go in a little more in depth at the Green-White-Checkered.
I'm excited to find out how that will turn out. Now we move on to our preview of the Axalta We Paint Winners 400 at Pocono. Pocono, I will say, I like when we go there because of the uniqueness of it. And for those who don't know, Pocono is a track with only 3 turns. Yes, it's a track with 3 turns. It's shaped like a triangle.
The tricky triangle.
The tricky triangle. The first turn is when they built the track, they modeled all 3 turns after different racetracks that were already in existence. First turn, not churn, was modeled after Trenton Speedway in Trenton, New Jersey. Second turn is modeled after Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the last turn is modeled after the Milwaukee Mile.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so flat coming off of 3 there. So, with Pocono, because it's almost like the Bermuda Triangle, because I've heard stories about it raining on one end of the track and the leader saying it's raining, we need to throw the caution, and NASCAR's all the way on the other side of the track saying, well, the sun is shining here.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like Talladega, Daytona, or the road courses. It's so massive, and in one side, but Pocono, you got rain and stuff, but Pocono always seems to be the place where some sort of animal runs out on the track, like a deer or a dog or a bird flies into a car or something. I can't tell. I mean,
I hate. Don't, please, listeners, don't think that I'm cruel against animals. But one of the funniest clips I ever saw was during practice. Martin Truex Jr. had said he thought he hit a beaver out there.
A beaver.
But when they went back to look at it, the footage, you saw this thing laying in the track, and I thought it was like a coonskin cap or something. And when the race car went by it started booking it towards the infield. Turned out to be a groundhog, and the guy running the cameras following the groundhog. And that poor little guy was booking it to get out of the way.
I know, it's probably Digger.
It's probably Digger, yeah. And at the last second, I forgot who was coming in, but you could he's coming in on the apron, and you could see the car wiggle because he's hit the brakes so hard. And he punted that thing like a football through the uprights. I hate to say it, but it was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Man.
So
I might have to do some search on that clip.
We'll look it up here in a minute.
I tell you one thing that get ready for listeners is to hear about Darrell Waltrip and Larry Mack talk about the damn tunnel turn. That's all they talk about.
The tunnel turn.
The tunnel turn. The tunnel turn. The tunnel turn. That's all they talk about. It's the tunnel turn.
Having driven on a virtual Pocono, tunnel turn's really not all that bad.
No, I do want to say, you talk about virtual. I did re-up my iRacing this week. So I started out, ran a late model race at USA Speedway in Lakeland, Florida.
Is it Lakeland?
Yeah, Lakeland.
I thought it was Pensacola.
No, Lakeland.
That's Five Flags Speedway. Sorry.
Yeah, it's started on the front row in my
Awesome.
race. Finished 6th.
Hey,
man. My tires went away on me, and I was 4th on the last lap. And old boy behind me got me loose, and he bumped me out of the way. I was everything I could to block, but then bumped up to the Truck Series. Ran Dover this week.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was fun, but. Ran some practice at Pocono in the truck, and I'll tell you what, turn 1 was the hardest for me because you carry the most speed into
exactly.
it. And Darrell was talking about it this week in these cars having the reduced horsepower this week. He says he thinks they're going to be carrying way more speed through the corners.
You're pretty much going to have to, because the way these cars are, like you said, are now, you don't have the power to get up off the corner as you once did. So you're trying to maximize your speed all the way through. So at Pocono, we always see, different strategies going on. Fuel mileage becomes a big issue. The front straightaway is long enough for them to draft. I mean, the restarts are always crazy.
I love the restart, and I've loved Pocono more and more throughout the years. I used to not. I mean, especially since Junior swept it last year, but I have enjoyed the racing because they'll fan out. Now, I heard Darrell Waltrip, or like one of the guys in the booth, said this week that he saw somebody they saw him 5 wide at Dover. There's no way
you can go 5 wide at Dover.
No, but you can go 5 wide at Pocono.
Yes, it will be an absolute Land Rush. Oh, that's the
Land Rush.
That's the famous Mike Joy and a Kansas Land Rush, and he was there,
Yeah, I'm sure he'll bring out, and Corey did want me to bring this. Mike Joy brought out his blanket again this past weekend at Dover, and I'm sure we'll hear about the blanket this weekend.
Blankets, Skosh, and probably Hungry Hounds will be all there.
Skosh, or as we said, we found out here on the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report, Tsukoshi.
So pretty much, that's what I look for in the Pocono races. I will say that going into the Pocono race, I don't, in my mind, have a clear-cut winner because it's always kind of a who's who. But I will say that usually whoever wins the first Pocono race really comes because they're so close together on the schedule.
Yeah.
They're only like 6 weeks apart.
Yeah, they usually, unless it's something weird, they usually sweep it. And because Denny swept it 2 years in a row. He won them, both of them, his rookie year and then his sophomore year. And then Dale Jr. swept last year. And I think there was another sweep, maybe Casey or I can't remember. I think there was one more sweep.
I think Jeff Gordon might have been in one of those, but yeah, like you said, they're always good. I'm a little sad though because we're getting close to the end of our Fox coverage.
Yeah, I mean it is extended. I mean this would have been the end if it was last year.
Yep.
But I can't remember. Are they going in? Are they covering the July Daytona, or is that when NBC's taking over? Because it used to be when it was that way, they would flip back and forth every year who covered the July, but I don't know who's covering it this year.
I think that I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
I think it's NBC.
Either way, the Daytona race in July will be fun.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
So we move on to our fantasy picks for the week.
Fantasy picks. All right.
And I would like to see who. Now I will add that Tom Clark has won five times this year in the Greenway Racing League.
Yeah, and
I'm the spring segment champion.
Yeah, you are.
I can't believe I beat your brother.
Yeah, you. I mean, you're rocking and rolling. I am having the worst luck this year, but you are tearing it up in the Yahoo. But you are doing the complete opposite. And this once again, your pick wrecked.
Yep.
So Corey's law of physics stayed this week with Jimmy winning.
Yep.
And the Tom law of wrecking and fantasy pick continues with Kyle Busch. Right now, Corey took over the points lead at 433.
You guys are in a tight battle.
And then I'm second at 432. And then Tom is bringing up the caboose with 302.
No, yeah, I mean, now that I've at least got triple digits, I feel like I'm closer than I was.
Well, I mean, you're only about 2.5 races behind. So you were 3 races behind.
So now I'm like 2.5.
Yeah,
it's like trying to make the playoffs in baseball.
Yeah, pretty much. You you had a couple of really good weeks there, Kansas and Charlotte, but Dover was a kicker for you. So you get your first pick.
Okay, I will. It'll be a toughie. I am going to go with. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski.
Oh, Brad! I mean, he was who you thought was going to win it last year,
and that's the reason I'm picking him for this race this year.
Yeah, but
if he can keep hot dog wrappers off his grill,
and not try to run into the back of Danica. Well, I'll move on to my pick this week, and I know Corey's gonna hate me for it, but I got to pick my boy. Back, swept it last year. I don't know how Dale Jr. is going to do without Letarte. Letarte being that supreme strategist.
Oh yes.
This year, but I think I still think that Junior's mature enough to know, and they have enough of a notebook that he knows what the car needs at Pocono. So I think Junior's going to get 3 in a row and get his second win of the season. Now I'm. Corey, him and I discussed his pick.
Good.
So we have his pick. He said if I pick, he wanted Junior, but if Junior got picked, which I told him I would pick Junior if you didn't, he wants to go with Mr. Harvick because Harvick battled Junior hard in the second Pocono race. Harvick almost wins every race anyway. So he said, he thinks Harvick's going to have a strong car. He wants to go Mr. Harvick. And if for some reason I'm wrong and he's like, no, that's not who I wanted, we'll
I'm pretty sure it's either going to be Johnson, Harvick, Logano, or Keselowski because he's wanting his theory to continue.
Yeah, I mean, look at his theory. He picked against his theory a couple times, but
so far the theory is in place.
Yeah, pretty much. And let's see what Jimmie's won. So his theory's been going on for a couple of. Well, no. Sorry, Jimmie didn't win at Charlotte, but Carl did. But the theory got back in place with Jimmie here. So,
well, that is our fantasy picks for the week. And we move on to you, Mr. Jacobs, for our Green-White-Checkers round. And I'm pretty excited about this round. This is going to cover a lot of things.
Yeah, we're going to start first with some NASCAR rules. We need Andy Petrie. You need to work on your Andy Petrie impression. That's.
Well, let me give it a shot here. I really don't understand why they didn't take 2 tires there, Daryl, because the NASCAR rulebook says that these guys can't be putting. I think that's
that's not bad. That's not bad.
Well, the NASCAR rulebook section 12-C says that a crewman can't fly over the wall as soon as the car comes within one pit stall of the race. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
That's actually really good, Tom. That was really good. Well, we'll go on. We'll do this green question. Jennifer Jo Cobb in the truck race walked up on the track while cars were moving. Trevor Bayne was called to NASCAR hauler as well. He got out of his car too early after he got in a wreck with, I can't remember who it was with, but on the front stretch at Dover. And NASCAR is kind of making a stink about drivers getting out of their vehicles early before the medics can get there, walking around on the track, especially after the aftermath with Tony Stewart and last year. They're really starting to put an emphasis on drivers staying in their cars until they get the okay to get out of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, some of my thoughts include that it seems that any time a big thing like that happens, NASCAR ups the ante on the safety rules like that. I remember after Dale Sr. died, the same rule was, drivers stay in your car until you put your window net down and, get out of the car. But as years passed, we saw that kind of rule kind of get lax a little bit. I think it's going to be a big stink, like you said, because, if a guy is mad, he's going to want to let that guy know as soon as possible. These guys are race car drivers. And, for me, I don't see drivers being stupid enough to get that close to the cars, and vice versa, any of those drivers swerving down to, express their frustration. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure there'll be a couple other violators, especially since when we get closer to the chase, and it'll be something that NASCAR has to clarify before next season.
Yeah, and one of my thoughts on it is that just I feel like getting out of your car and throwing your helmet at somebody or giving them a finger or whatever they do, that's part of the roots. And
exactly.
I know safety is important. That's definitely important. But that's that's like they don't take fighting out of hockey. Yes, it's dangerous, but it's part of the grassroots of hockey.
It's the entertainment factor.
Yeah, and getting out of your car pissed off and going and showing your displeasure, that's part of the grassroots. And I really hope that they don't start cracking down so much that they do away with that, because I personally, as a fan, love it.
Yeah, they're going to have a problem on their hands with that one. So, let's move on to our white flag question.
All right, white flag. We're going to go to the Xfinity Series. Chris Buescher picking up his 3rd win and the points lead. Are you surprised that a Jack Roush car is leading the points right now in the Xfinity over those like Gibbs and Kyle Busch cars and Penske and Dale Jr. that traditionally are winning the races? Is that what's your thoughts on Chris Buescher having the points lead with 3 wins right now?
Well, he's got 3 wins so far this season. To me, that's pretty darn good, especially since like we've said before, a lot of the Cup drivers coming in and winning pretty much all the races, leading every lap of all the races. I won't get into that. I think those guys that could dip down there are just looking for an ego boost. But for him to compete against those types of drivers and win, and have 3 of those already this year, I think it's a strategy that Roush has done before. And I think when things are all said and done, it will work in the future. I mean, Roush has his hands. Him and Ford, the Ford Motor Company, are, partners. They're going to try to get Roush everything they need to compete. So, with the exception of people like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Greg Biffle and Trevor Bayne, I'm not going to go too deep into why I think all three of those drivers need to be scrapped, but it's Roush is realizing, something's going to have to change. And Jack has always been good at, mixing it up to find out what combination works best.
Yeah, I've really been disappointed in Trevor Bayne this year on the Cup side.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky's just kind of doing what I figured Ricky would do. Biffle seems to be on his way kind of out. But I really think, going back to Chris Buescher, I think he's going to be a bigger factor in a few years than people think. Right now people are all over Dylan and Larson and Eric Jones and but Buescher's and Elliott, those are the ones you hear. But I think Buescher, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he's the key to Roush getting back on track.
Yeah,
because what he's doing in the lower series, if he can bring that up to the upper series, that'll be important. But we'll see going forward. We'll do updates on where the Xfinity series stands.
Absolutely.
And our checker question is we're going to talk about, one of the greatest race car drivers of all time. And I know you hate it, Tom, but Jimmie Johnson,
yes,
got his 10th win at Dover. That puts him in company with Petty, Waltrip, Earnhardt, and Pearson as the one of only now 5 drivers to have 10+ wins at a track. How does this continue to cement his legacy? And he's only 2 wins away from tying Dale Earnhardt.
Again, it's one of those things. Now, I don't. We'd have to ask people that have lived in the past who have witnessed drivers do the same things. Did you feel that they were building a legacy? Because we can look back and say, yeah, Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, they're all legends in our eyes because of their numbers, but we weren't there during the time that they were getting them done. So maybe not so much, our generation of fans it certainly does add to his legacy. But I think fans in the future will look back and say, well, man, Jimmie Johnson was a beast out there. He was a great driver. And it's a tough pill for me to swallow because I'm biased in being a Jeff Gordon fan. To me, Jeff Gordon is shoulda, coulda, woulda. To me, it's a subjective matter because I'm gonna always think Jeff Gordon is better than Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah.
I know the numbers don't quite stack up, but in an overall sense, yes, it'll be good for Jimmie because when he retires, he's a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He will be a recognizable face. It will continue. He's going to be added to the Hall of Legends. You do need that in a sport to continue being healthy. I mean, people are talking about LeBron James in the NBA or Kobe Bryant. Will he win 7? Beat Jordan and so.
I think it's important for NASCAR in a way to have like a legend in the making. Because Gordon, you had Earnhardt and Gordon, and then you've got Johnson right now, and it gets boring. Like I'm sitting there like, God, I'm tired of seeing Johnson win so much. God, but Johnson, he's gonna be in the top 3 of wins all time, maybe second.
I hope not top 3 because, gosh,
I think he will. I really think he will. I mean, he wins 4 races a year, and he's still got a good number of years.
Oh yeah,
and as long as him and Chad stay together, he will trail off a little bit. But what Gordon will always be a legend in what he just brought to the sport. That young, that young gun firecracker from California that came in and took the sport by storm and really opened up the sport out of the South. He broke that barrier and that's what Gordon meant for the sport on a level of importance moving forward in its culture, I think that can never be matched because at this point,
it's his fault. It's the way it is now.
Yeah. But I think NASCAR, they got some work to do to get the sport back into a really healthy state. But I think they're going in the right direction with the changes they've made to the chase. But as far as Jimmie, I mean, he just continues to kind of, do things that you might not have thought you'd see again.
And speaking of things good for the sport, I think we should touch on next week. We don't have enough time this week to cover it. That unofficial drivers meeting they held at Dover this past Saturday.
Yeah, I think after we get some more info on how that went, that'll be a good topic for us to cover next week.
And we'll give our opinions on what we think would make the sport better.
Yep.
And that concludes our review of the FedEx 400 at Dover International Speedway. And remember, you can follow us on Twitter at TCW Speed Report. Email your questions to tcwspeedreport@gmail.com. Like the Tom Clark Weekly Speed Report Facebook page. And a big thank you to our partners, Rao Brothers Painting, found on Facebook. And a big shout out of thanks to the City Farm Project, also in Hickory, North Carolina. This is your host, Tom Clark, signing out.